So if you look at rural seller and rural buyer, what really is the challenge? One is how to promote this intra-rural economy through different mechanisms like locally embedded growth in agriculture and the rural non-farm sector. A lot of people have the mistaken belief when you say rural is essentially agriculture based. Not so. Increasingly it's so happening that there are non-agricultural based activities, services, products, and it's important for us to recognize rural not equal to agriculture, it's beyond that. Second, one can look at rural industrialization, and that's a endeavor that many state governments are making, but even in some cases private sector is also trying to do. It's also important to realize that new technology can considerably aid in this process. I think cell phone technologies have really made distances and geography history. It's very easy for people now to communicate, and you don't need those fancy infrastructure that you required for fixed line technology. Wireless technology helps in a considerable fashion. Today with mobiles you can also do mobile payment mechanisms, mobile commerce, education via mobile, so on and so forth. So that too is one way of encouraging intra-rural consolidation. Second, if you take between the rural area, that is the rural seller and the urban buyer, very important thing there is linkages in the farm sector. And there are institutional mechanisms that exist, many times not very well, like cooperatives. But if you take certain areas, microfinance, the self-help groups have done a good job. Yes, the microfinance industry has fallen upon a bit of hard times after the debacles and fiascos in Andhra Pradesh, but still in many other parts they still perform a very good role. And actually they help provide different kinds of linkages for rural producers, improve their bargaining power. A key thing really, as we have seen in this rural marketplace, is the lack of transparency. So information provision, markets, market opportunities, prices, so on and so forth, will considerably help rural producers, especially agro enterprises, and help them link up with their urban consumers in a better way. The other thing is really to, when you look at this rural network of the farm sector, is facilitating the better matching of demand with rural supply. Many times many rural activities, enterprises need various kinds of intervention because products need to be accepted better by traditional market segments and also newer emerging market segments. There has to be some mechanism by which there is lesser resistance for certain types of products and product categories. They also need, rural enterprises need access to better markets through development of marketing channels, product improvement, packaging improvement, branding, diversification. Now all these are different activities, and it's not always possible for any one entity to take it on completely on their own. Many times many of these rural producers have very little wherewithal, not just forget about money, but it's actually in terms of other kinds of capabilities. And there is an emerging both social marketing related initiatives being taken, non-profit marketing endeavors being taken by different types of entities to help in this regard. As we can see, rural marketing means a whole bunch of opportunities. Let's take a look at some kinds of opportunities that are emerging. For example, if you take agro produce, there is increasing concern about the kind of fruits, vegetables and other kinds of produce that one is getting, which are pesticide and fertilizer related, and we're not very sure about the quality. Today a lot of mangoes that you get have calcium carbide for artificial ripening. A lot of greens are dipped in endosulfan. So a lot of people are very concerned about the quality of the produce they're getting. There is, especially in the West, a tremendous growth of organic produce. Is that an opportunity in India? Yes, it is definitely there. Especially in certain urban pockets, it's increasing. People are worried about what they're consuming, they're worried about their health. There is an opportunity there. There's also a growing opportunity for things like biodiesel. We've seen it happen in places like Brazil, where ethanol is increasingly becoming a fuel alternative, or at least blended with petrol to make vehicles run. So there is opportunity there. There are also medicinal plant related opportunities happening. If you look at agro produce, there's also opportunities in natural pesticides, herbal products, because more and more the world is also increasingly worried about the kind of medications one is having, and the fact that a lot of India, for example, is getting antibiotic resistant strains of various types of diseases. In terms of services, there are emerging needs for rural tourism. There's a great opportunity in rural retailing, and some companies are already making a mark over there. There's also a growing need for rural financial services, healthcare, investing, so on and so forth. So if you look at it, there are some targeted opportunities, and there are different companies trying to see what they can do out there, either looking at the rural areas as a potential market or rural areas as a potential source, both ways. Now, one of the big challenges historically in India has been to strengthen the linkages between rural Bharat on one side and urban India on the other. So, the objective really is how can we uplift large sections of those who are living on the edge so as to overall improve the standard of living. So, it's not just to look at business as a high margin, high profit activity, but also to look at how can one reduce costs so as to help the poor and ameliorate their standard of living. So really speaking, there is, like Professor C.K. Prahalad said, there is an opportunity at the bottom of the pyramid, but that means really how can we re-engineer how we produce, how we function, how we deliver things so as to afford it at a much lower price and do it at a much lower cost. So, if you can't think of rural, you really can't think of India. And I think as we are growing as an economy, the way that we can really grow much bigger, much faster and much more balanced is by really focusing on the rural area. So if you sum up, the countryside is where the markets of the future lie in India, because urban markets in many cases are getting very competitive, very saturated for several product categories. And if you look at it in terms of absolute population, the rural areas are much bigger. As rural prosperity increases, as rural consumption increases, the size of the rural markets is expanding. Yes, there are challenges. We have seen a lot of challenges in terms of geographical dispersion of villages, in terms of social mores, in terms of the justice system, in terms of disparities and all that. But let's remember, there are quite a few success stories. You have people like LIC, which sells a lot, BSNL. You've seen how cell phone usage in Andhra, rural Andhra is higher than, in terms of billing, higher than in urban Hyderabad. You also have success stories like Arvind Mills Rough and Tough jeans, which did very well in rural India, Britannia's Tiger biscuits, ITC's E-Chopal, very much touted initiative and worthy of emulation, and is happening in many other places. And similarly HLL's Project Shakti, which have all shown us what is really possible. We know that there are challenges, that's a given, but we also see that there are tremendous opportunities for us as marketers. So if you want to bet on the future of Indian marketing, you might just want to bet on rural marketing.